Without the support of the European Commission, it was impossible for a small federation like the European Mortgage Federation to guide the banks towards the right direction. I think that we are getting there, and together with the support of the Advisory Council, which is not only the European Commission, but also the European Investment Bank, the World Bank, IFC, and EBRD, they are all together ready to support the pilot phase. And this is also because of your trust in our work, and we thank you for this. You prefer to...
I will speak from here. Thank you. Thank you, Luca. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank Luca, the European Mortgage Federation, for inviting me to this launch of this important event. I think it's more important than the event is the long-term commitment of the European Mortgage Federation to the energy efficiency objective. And I think they have been very persistent, one of our partners that have been most persistent about pursuing this objective and helping out the trajectory to this policy implementation. It is also an honor to be here today with so many banks from all over Europe and so many representatives from a variety of sectors involved in energy efficiency in Europe. And I believe this is a key moment for the mortgage sector in Europe, the launch of this pilot scheme, and I am sure that we will see eventually this industrialization effect that Luca demonstrated so lively with the cars. I would also like to thank Julian for his presence today and for supporting this European project. Now, as you all know, our energy efficiency objective is one of the major drivers to unlock our potential for energy transition. Together with renewable energy, probably they are the two key pillars of our European strategy to energy transition. And over the last 10 years, we have made a number of initiatives and a number of projects to improve energy efficiency in all sectors of the economy. So we do have a basis. We have created a basis from which to build on. We have achieved our objectives for the midterm to our road to 2020, and we are confident that when it comes to energy efficiency targets, we will reach our objectives for 2020. But let's say the first period of success, it's not automatically will not lead, let's say, to the next stage. We need persistence and we need different instruments to move from the 20% to the 30%, and that's why this initiative is so important to us. We need to accelerate our efforts, and the building sector is one of the most challenging sectors, and it's one of the sectors where we have not done a lot in the road to the 2020 targets. Buildings are the largest energy consumers in Europe. They account for 40% of final energy consumption and 36% of greenhouse gas emissions in Europe. It is the sector with the largest energy savings potential, and 3/4 of our buildings are energy inefficient, and we, for the moment, refurbish only 1% of the building stock every year. So the potential is huge. In terms of investments, 75% of the investment that we have identified for energy transition over the next 10 years is linked to buildings. We have identified from now to 2030 that we need about 180 billion per year on energy transition. 3/4 of that is related to buildings. The private investment when it comes to building is as important as the investment by the public authorities. The building stock belongs part of it, 1/3 of it to the public authorities and 2/3 to it to private individuals, and therefore it is important to bring together the financial sector, the private sector, and do this transition with the help of private investment. How we can do that? I think there are different strands to our policy. The most important is, of course, to provide policy stability and predictability. And that's why the Clean Energy for All package of legislative package is very important. We are confident that the legislative package at the European level will be adopted by June under Bulgarian presidency, and then there will be about 20 months given to national governments to translate it into national legislation. But you are probably, some of you, familiar with the discussion about the target, the 30%, 33%. As Julian said, the direction of travel is already there long time ago, and the final details are being discussed. They will be ready soon, and I think the open issues are very small and only relatively relevant for the discussion and the preparation of the private sector. We have some discussion on percentages and some discussion on the timing of, let's say, midterm reviews or coming into effect of certain measures, but the large bulk of the legislation is endorsed by the Council and the European Parliament, and therefore it is time to start anticipating and preparing for the implementation of this package. Next to the, or in parallel, let's say, to the energy efficiency target, we have the Energy Performance Buildings Directive. This is already approved. It will have a great impact on, the market for commercial, primarily commercial real estate, and this will come into effect also in June, probably next week. I think the choices regarding mobility that are being taken in parallel for the transport sector will have a great effect, and they are also setting out, let's say, the choices of investors looking into the real estate or other sectors to invest. Now, all this will come into effect very quickly. I mean, 2 years from June is tomorrow. Member states are already, I'm visiting all member states, they're all preparing long-term renovation strategies. They set out, they have to set out according to the legislation, but they do actually prepare and set out how fast and how they will, and with which priority they will renovate their building stock, if they will give emphasis to the public building first, if they give incentives to the private buildings. The number of housing of buildings that have to be renovating compared to the current trend is astonishing. We are talking a huge increase compared to the current levels. It will require a huge effort and incentives to do that, but the benefits are very tangible, as both previous speakers have highlighted. They are tangible for the household in terms of energy savings. They are tangible for the government goals on CO2 emissions, and they will be tangible for the economy as a whole. So our instruments from the policy perspective is to work with governments to look at the long-term renovation strategies and make sure that we facilitate this through regulatory measures, but also inform and attract the financial sector to participate to this, and this will be a one-way street. There will not be possible to have mortgages that are not green in a few years. You can decide, and each bank can decide if it will be in 2 years that they will launch the project, in 3 years or in 5 years, but I can promise you there will be no way to get out of it, out of this perspective in the coming years. We also have helped with governments and relevant authorities to take flanking measures. For example, the Eurostat guidance on the accounting treatment of energy performance contracts that was adopted last year by the statistical authorities, and it was very well explained in an operational guidance published by the European Investment Bank and Eurostat about a month ago. It offers great perspectives for having energy performance contracts, and suppliers work with the public sector to renovate public buildings. This will be another huge revolution, to accelerate the, renovation of public buildings. And make the private sector participate, and the financial sector will play a key role as well. Energy performance contract suppliers will need financing from the private sector. This will be a good business and reliable business with a timetable, and they will have to engage. There are different schemes in different member states to help the transition with public resources. In some countries, the resources are used primarily as grants. We believe this is not the most efficient way in the medium term because the resources are limited, and we believe in this area of energy efficiency that public money can be leveraged in schemes that involve the banking sector, the financial sector, and serve as a risk absorption rather than as a grant scheme. But there are national or regional schemes that are being developed and have been developed. So far, for example, for the countries that are recipients for European structural and investment funds, these countries have and regions have allocated about 27 billion to this kind of activities. We also support energy efficiency schemes through the European Fund of Strategic Investments. Overall, we will reach by the end of the month about 315 billion of funding, and of which 62 billion is related to this type of activities. So a lot of risky financing in structures, guarantee structures or investment platforms to energy efficiency through the European Fund of Strategic Investments, and combined with the different national or regional support schemes, they provide the basis from which to start. But I repeat, these examples that we have are just the start. We need to have a huge acceleration in the deployment of these schemes and the objectives that we have for the period 2021-2027. This will be the crucial period from until 2027. 2027, it will be the final review before we get to 2030, and the final possibility for corrections, for actions by the member states before we measure the effect of our 2030 target objectives. So there are a number of initiatives in setting the policy and regulatory framework, a number of initiatives in having support mechanisms. And now, last but not least, it was mentioned by the previous speakers, it is the initiative to work on sustainable finance with in the framework of the Capital Market Union. We have to redirect capital flows to green and sustainable investments, to embed sustainability into risk management, and to increase transparency in the financial sector when it comes to sustainability issues. The action plan on sustainable finance has been endorsed in March, very quickly following the high-level group work on sustainable finance that was finalized earlier this year. We have yesterday started the work on the taxonomy on sustainable investments. It's a complicated process, but it is moving fast forward, and they will have an impact on this. It could end up having capital requirement, let's say, impact and on different products or on different activities. This is not the only way that one can look at these initiatives. It is wrong to think that the only way to support sustainable finance is by having favorable capital treatments under CRD or other legislation. But I think it is encouraging for the financial sector that we are also looking at this opportunity, and the regulators, supervisors are ready to look at this as well. So we are very proud to see today the launch of this concrete project. We think that it is an area, mortgages, that can deliver a lot to our energy efficiency objectives. This is an initiative that we have supported through our Horizon 2020 program. We will continue to support, and we are looking forward to see the results of this pilot phase. And I'm looking forward to the opportunity to come here to the post-pilot phase, let's say, event, and make sure that we will see a widespread use of these green mortgages all over Europe, involving even more banks than this pioneer phase, revolutionary group, as Luca called it. But I think there is a great potential in having a wider spread of this green mortgage concept, and I think that the pioneering banks will be rewarded because the legislation, the regulatory framework, and the civil society and society pressure will only further support this initiative. Thank you very much and good luck.